The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Ambassador Jake Harrison stepped through the entrance, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and clean against the alien architecture that surrounded him. Behind him walked Lieutenant Commander Beth Murphy, her military bearing evident in every step she took across the polished floor that reflected the lights of 1,000 different worlds. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes from across the galaxy. Towering columns stretched up toward a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond, each point of light representing a member world of the Council. Circular tiers of seating rose like an amphitheater, filled with representatives from dozens of species that had come together to govern their shared corner of space. Harrison could feel the eyes on him as he walked toward the central podium. Some of those eyes were compound like those of the insectoid Zekth. Others were the cold reptilian, slits of the Karathi, and still others glowed with the inner light of the crystalline Veltar. But regardless of their shape or color, they all held the same expression as they watched the human delegation approach. Amusement mixed with contempt, the look one might give to a child playing at being an adult. The whispers started before Harrison even reached the podium. The Karathi delegation hissed quietly among themselves in their harsh language, while the bear-like Thalarian rumbled low conversations that sounded like distant thunder. Even the musical tones of the Veltar seemed to carry a mocking quality as they chimed their thoughts to one another. Murphy took her position at a smaller console near the main podium, her hands moving efficiently over the controls as she prepared the human delegation's presentation materials. Her face remained neutral, but Harrison could see the slight tension in her shoulders that told him she was as aware as he was of the hostile atmosphere in the chamber. The current speaker of the council, a tall Veltar whose crystalline body caught and reflected the light in beautiful patterns, struck a harmonic note that brought the chamber to order. When the conversations died down to respectful silence, the speaker's voice rang out like music across the assembled representatives. We gather today to hear the petition of the species known as humans for membership in our council. As is our custom, we will hear from those who would speak for or against this petition before we vote. General Korth of the Karathi military was the first to rise from his seat. His scaled form was impressive even by galactic standards, standing nearly 3 meters tall with muscles that rippled beneath armor that had seen real combat. Scars marked his hide, each one a testament to battles fought and won in service to his empire. Honored Speaker, Korth began, his voice carrying the sibilant quality common to his species. We must ask ourselves what these humans bring to our council. For 50 years they have expanded through our galaxy, taking world after world, yet when have they ever stood with us in battle? When the Zekth swarmed the outer rim colonies, destroying 3 inhabited worlds before we could stop them, where were the humans? When the pirate fleets of the Void Raiders terrorized our trade routes for 2 full years, who was notably absent from our military response? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Harrison remained still at the podium, his weathered face showing no reaction to the accusations being leveled against his species. Korth's voice grew stronger as he continued. These creatures speak constantly of peace and diplomacy, yet it is others who bleed to maintain the order that allows their peaceful expansion. They take the benefits of our protection while offering nothing in return but empty words about cooperation and understanding. The general's clawed hand gestured dismissively toward the human delegation. They claim to be explorers and scientists, but what use are researchers who run from danger? They say they are diplomats, but what weight do the words of cowards carry when real decisions must be made? Laughter began to spread through the chamber like ripples in a pond. First came the harsh, barking sounds that passed for amusement among the Karathi, then the chittering of the Zekth, and finally the tinkling sounds of Veltar humor. Even species that rarely showed emotion seemed caught up in the moment of shared derision. A Thalarian representative stood up, his massive form casting shadows across nearby delegates. "Perhaps," he rumbled in a voice like rocks grinding together, "we should create a new category of membership for them. Associate status for species too weak to contribute to our common defense." This brought even more laughter, and Harrison noticed that some of the smaller species who normally remained quiet during council sessions were joining in the mockery. It seemed that ridiculing the humans was one thing every species could agree on. The Veltar speaker struck another harmonic note, calling for order once again. When the laughter died down, a different Veltar representative rose to address the chamber. "My colleagues speak harshly, but perhaps they miss the true value these humans could bring to our council," the crystal being chimed. "Every galactic community needs those who prefer words to weapons. We could use them as mediators when our warrior races have disagreements. They could serve as neutral negotiators when conflicts arise between member worlds." The suggestion was clearly meant to be conciliatory, but it only brought fresh waves of laughter from the assembled delegates. The idea of using humans as intermediaries struck everyone as absurd. How could beings who fled from every conflict possibly mediate disputes between species who had earned their place through strength? Murphy's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as she listened to the continued mockery. Her fingers moved over her console, bringing up data files that she knew would never be requested. The humans had come prepared to present detailed reports on their contributions to galactic stability, their scientific discoveries, their successful diplomatic missions. But it was becoming clear that none of the assembled representatives had any interest in hearing about human achievements. Harrison finally stepped forward, moving closer to the microphone that would carry his voice throughout the chamber. The movement was small, but something about it caused the laughter to fade slightly. Perhaps it was the way he moved, with a controlled precision that spoke of hidden strength, or perhaps it was simply that his patience in the face of such mockery was beginning to seem unnatural. "Honored representatives," Harrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space without any electronic amplification. The chamber fell completely silent, not out of respect, but out of curiosity about what this supposedly weak human might say in response to such overwhelming ridicule. "You mistake our restraint for weakness," he continued, his tone calm and measured. "You assume our preference for peace stems from inability to wage war. This is a dangerous misconception that I fear you will come to regret." The silence in the chamber took on a different quality. Something in Harrison's voice, some subtle undertone that every predator species recognized on an instinctual level, had changed the atmosphere completely. The silence that followed Harrison's words lasted only a few seconds before it was shattered by the thunderous sound of something massive hitting the chamber floor. War Master Krex of the Thalarian Empire had risen from his seat and brought his ceremonial warhammer down with enough force to crack the polished stone beneath his feet. The Thalarian were known throughout the galaxy as the fiercest warriors in known space. Standing nearly 4 meters tall and covered in thick brown fur that could turn aside most energy weapons, they had conquered 17 star systems through pure military might. Their culture revolved entirely around combat, and they measured worth by how well one could fight. Krex himself was impressive even by Thalarian standards. Battle scars marked his massive frame, and his warhammer bore the marks of countless conflicts. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had personally led charges against enemy fortifications and lived to tell about it. "Enough of these empty words, human," Krex roared, his voice echoing off the chamber walls like thunder in a canyon. "You speak of misconceptions and regrets, but all we hear are the same weak excuses we have heard from your species for 50 years. The War Master stepped down from his seating area, his heavy footsteps causing small vibrations that could be felt throughout the chamber. Other delegates moved aside as he approached the central area where Harrison stood, giving the massive warrior plenty of space. The Thalarian Empire has heard enough talk from creatures who have never proven themselves in battle, Krex continued, raising his war hammer so that its metal head caught the light. We challenge the humans to single combat. Choose your champion, and let steel decide whether you deserve a place among warriors. A ripple of excitement went through the assembled delegates. Thalarian challenges were rare and usually resulted in spectacular displays of violence. The bear-like warriors were known for their honor in combat, but also for their brutal efficiency in ending fights quickly and permanently. General Korth hissed his approval from his seat among the Karathi delegation. Yes, let us see what these peaceful humans can do when words fail them. Perhaps then we will learn their true nature. Other voices joined in agreement. The Zekth began their chittering war chants, while several smaller species that rarely spoke during council sessions called out their support for the challenge. Even the usually diplomatic Veltar seemed interested in seeing how the humans would respond to such a direct threat. Harrison looked back at Murphy, who gave him a slight nod. She had been expecting something like this to happen. The human intelligence. Services had provided detailed profiles on every major species in the Council, and the Thalarian tendency toward violent solutions was well documented. Murphy activated her communication device with a few quick touches. The small screen showed that she was connecting to secure channels that reached far beyond the Council chambers, linking her to human command structures that most of the assembled aliens had never imagined existed. We accept your challenge, War Master. Krex, Harrison said, turning back to face the massive alien warrior. His voice remained calm and steady, showing no fear of the creature that could tear him apart with bare hands. The announcement brought cheers from some sections of the chamber and worried murmurs from others. Many of the delegates had assumed the humans would refuse the challenge or try to negotiate their way out of it. The fact that Harrison had accepted so readily was unexpected. Krex showed his teeth in what might have been a smile or a threat display. Good. Choose your champion quickly, human. I grow tired of waiting. Before we fight, Harrison continued, raising his voice to address the entire chamber, allow me to tell you why humans avoid war. The request brought groans of frustration from several delegates. General Korth stood up again, his scales rattling with agitation. More words. Always more words with these creatures. Fight or leave this place. You will want to hear this, Harrison said, and something in his tone made even the most impatient delegates pause. I warn you all that when I am finished, none of you will laugh again. You will understand why every human settlement has the same words carved above their doors. Murphy had activated the chamber's main display systems while Harrison spoke. The massive screens that ringed the upper levels of the chamber flickered to life, showing the human diplomatic seal. But as the delegates watched, the image changed, to show something else entirely. War is not hell, Harrison said, reading the words that appeared on every screen. War is worse. Hell is just where we send our enemies. The chamber fell completely silent. Even War Master Krex lowered his warhammer, slightly as he stared at the screens around him. The words were simple enough for every translation system to handle, but their meaning sent a chill through beings who had thought they understood what humans were. Dr. Alan Foster stepped forward from where he had been standing near the back of the human delegation. The elderly historian carried a datapad that connected directly to the chamber's information systems. His presence had been largely ignored by the alien delegates, who saw him as just another weak human academic. What you are about to see, Foster said in a voice that carried surprising authority, is why my species learned to fear themselves long before we ever met any of you. The screens around the chamber began to display images that made even the most battle-hardened warriors in the assembly shift uncomfortably in their seats. Ancient human battlefields stretched as far as the eye could see, covered with the remains of soldiers who had died fighting their own kind. This is Gettysburg, Foster explained, as the images showed a field scattered with broken weapons and fallen men. 50,000 human casualties in 3 days of fighting. And this was considered a small engagement by our standards. The images shifted to show trenches filled with mud and blood, stretching across entire continents. The Western Front, where humans spent 4 years learning new ways to kill each other. Poison gas, machine guns, artillery that could be heard from hundreds of kilometers away. Delegate after delegate stared at the screens in growing horror. These were not the actions of a peaceful species. These were the tactics of creatures that had turned warfare into a science. But surely these are ancient history, protested a Veltar representative, their musical voice taking on a discordant note. Primitive conflicts from before your species reached the stars. Harrison smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, but it was not a pleasant expression. These images are from our recent past. We were still fighting wars like this when some of your species were discovering fire. Foster continued his presentation, showing more recent conflicts. Cities reduced to rubble, weapons that could destroy entire armies in minutes, strategies that targeted not just enemy soldiers, but entire populations. We developed something we called total war, Foster explained, his academic tone making the horrors on screen seem even more chilling. The concept that everyone in an enemy nation was a legitimate target. Soldiers, civilians, children, the elderly. We learned to wage war not just against armies, but against entire civilizations. War Master Krex had gone completely still, his warhammer forgotten in his massive hands. Around the chamber, delegates who had been laughing just minutes before now sat in stunned silence as they watched humanity's violent history unfold before them. "This is not what should concern you," Harrison said, his voice cutting through the shocked quiet. "What should terrify you is this. We stopped fighting each other not because we became peaceful, but because we became too good at it." The screens around the chamber shifted again, and this time they showed something that made even the most hardened warriors among the alien delegates lean back in their seats. Cities that had once housed millions of humans were now nothing but shadows burned into concrete, their populations erased in seconds by weapons that turned matter itself into pure energy. "These are nuclear weapons," Dr. Foster explained, his calm academic tone making the images even more disturbing. "We created them to end the largest war in our history, but then we realized what we had done. We had built devices that could destroy entire cities with a single bomb." The images showed test after test, each explosion larger than the last. Mountains disappeared in flashes of light, islands were vaporized, and entire sections of ocean boiled away into steam. The humans had not been content with simply building 1 or 2 of these weapons. They had built thousands. But we did not. "Stop there," Foster continued, and the screens showed blueprints and technical diagrams that made the alien military experts in the chamber go pale. "We developed hydrogen bombs that were 1,000 times more powerful. We designed missiles that could carry these weapons across continents in minutes. We created submarines that could hide beneath the oceans and launch enough firepower to destroy entire worlds." Captain Roy Bennett stepped forward from his position near the human delegation. His military uniform bore decorations that most of the aliens did not recognize, but his bearing made it clear that he was a career soldier who had seen real combat. "The nuclear age taught us something important," Bennett said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had studied war his entire life. "We learned that there is no such thing as a limited conflict when the weapons become powerful enough. Every war has the potential to become the last war." The screens now showed laboratories where humans in protective suits worked with substances that glowed with their own inner light. Charts and graphs displayed the effects of biological weapons that could kill every living thing on a planet while leaving the infrastructure intact. "We developed diseases that could wipe out entire species," Foster explained. "Viruses that would lie dormant for years before activating. Bacteria that could eat through any known material. Genetic weapons that could target specific DNA patterns. General Idea Korth was no longer hissing his approval. The Karathi warrior sat frozen in his seat, staring at images of weapons that could kill without the honor of face-to-face combat. Around him, other military leaders from various species were beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew about warfare was primitive compared to what humans had developed. Chemical weapons were among our earliest innovations, Bennett continued, and the screens showed soldiers wearing masks and protective gear as they advanced through landscapes where nothing lived. Gases that could dissolve lung tissue, agents that could penetrate any armor, toxins that would cause madness before death. The Zekth delegation had stopped their chittering entirely. Their compound eyes were fixed on images of weapons that could kill their entire hive clusters in minutes. The insectoid species had always relied on their numbers and their ability to overwhelm enemies through sheer force of population, but these human weapons made numbers irrelevant. "We perfected the art of killing from a distance," Foster said, showing images of artillery pieces that could fire shells across hundreds of kilometers. "We learned to rain death from the sky with aircraft that could carry more destructive power than entire armies. We built ships that could bombard targets from beyond the horizon." War Master Krex finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "How many of your own kind did you kill with these weapons?" Harrison answered without consulting any notes or data files. "In our largest war, we estimate between 70 and 80 million human deaths. In our nuclear age, we came within minutes of ending our entire civilization several times. We built enough weapons to destroy our planet dozens of times over." The number hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Even species that had fought galactic wars had never imagined casualties on such a scale. The idea that humans had done this to themselves repeatedly throughout their history was almost incomprehensible. "But you said you stopped fighting each other," said a Veltar representative, their musical voice taking on a pleading quality. "Surely you learned to control these impulses." "We did learn," Harrison replied, and his voice took on the same ominous tone that had silenced the chamber earlier. "We learned that we were becoming too efficient at destruction, so we made a choice." The screens changed again, showing human colonies spreading across their home system and then beyond. But now the alien delegates could see things they had missed before. Every settlement was positioned for maximum defensive advantage. Every structure was built to withstand attack. Every civilian installation had military applications. "We turned our violence outward," Bennett explained. "We directed all of our aggressive instincts toward a single goal: the protection of humanity from external threats." Dr. Lisa Chang stepped forward from the human delegation. The xenobiologist had been quiet throughout the presentation, but now she activated her own datapad and connected it to the chamber's systems. "We study every species we encounter," Chang said, her voice clinical and professional. "We learn your biology, your psychology, your weaknesses. This information is gathered during every peaceful contact, every diplomatic exchange, every cultural meeting." The screens now showed detailed anatomical diagrams of every species represented in the chamber, pressure points that could cause instant paralysis, atmospheric compositions that could be altered to cause unconsciousness, frequencies that could disrupt nervous systems. "We know exactly how to kill each of you," Chang continued matter-of-factly. "Not just as individuals, but as entire species. We have contingency plans for every possible conflict scenario." The Thalarian delegation was making low, rumbling sounds of distress. Their warrior culture had always emphasized honorable combat between equals, but the humans were describing something far more sinister. They were talking about the complete elimination of entire civilizations. "When humans plan for war," Harrison said, walking closer to the assembled delegates, "we do not plan to win battles. We do not plan to capture territory. We do not plan to force surrender." He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering, The final revelation that would change how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity. When humans plan for war, we plan for extinction events. We do not fight to defeat our enemies. We fight to ensure they never exist again. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the background hum of the life support system seemed muted as the full implications of Harrison's words became clear to every delegate present. "We have spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of ending civilizations," Harrison continued. "We know how to destroy planets, how to collapse stars, how to render entire solar systems uninhabitable for millions of years." Foster activated one final series of images on the screens. Theoretical weapons that existed only in human computer simulations, but were well within their technological capabilities to build, devices that could crack planets like eggs, machines that could ignite the atmospheres of gas giants, weapons that could destabilize the very fabric of space itself. "This is why we avoid war," Harrison said softly. "Not because we cannot fight, but because when we do fight, nothing remains." War Master Krex stood frozen in the center of the chamber, his massive warhammer hanging loose in his grip as he stared at the theoretical weapons displayed on the screens around him. The Thalarian warrior had faced death countless times in personal combat, but the scale of destruction the humans were describing was beyond anything his warrior culture had ever imagined. "You speak of theories and simulations," Krex said, his voice shaking slightly as he tried to maintain his composure. "These are just images on screens. Show us what you can actually do, human, if you have the courage." The challenge hung in the air like a physical thing, but this time there was no laughter from the assembled delegates. The chamber remained silent, as every representative waited to see how Harrison would respond to the demand for proof of human capabilities. Harrison looked back at Murphy, who had been monitoring communications from the human fleet since the presentation began. She gave him a slight nod, then activated her communication device with a series of quick commands that sent signals far beyond the council chambers. "Admiral, please proceed with the demonstration," Murphy said into her communicator, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. For several seconds, nothing happened. The alien delegates began to shift restlessly in their seats, some of them starting to believe that perhaps the humans had been bluffing after all. But then the chamber's long-range sensors began to emit warning sounds that made every military expert present look up in alarm. High above the planet where the council chambers were located, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. The distortion was subtle at first, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But it grew stronger as the assembled delegates watched the sensor displays in growing horror. 300 human ships materialized out of nothing, appearing as if they had been carved from the darkness of space itself. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and vessels of configurations that no alien military had ever seen before surrounded the planet in a perfect sphere of controlled violence. The alien fleets that had been orbiting the planet in what they thought was a position of strength suddenly found themselves completely surrounded. Karathi battle cruisers that had ruled the spaceways for centuries were dwarfed by human dreadnoughts that bristled with weapon systems. Thalarian warrior ships that had conquered 17 star systems looked like toys next to the massive human vessels that had appeared among them. "Every ship in this system is currently targeted by our weapons," Harrison announced, his voice carrying the same calm tone he had used throughout the presentation. "Not your shields, not your hulls, not your weapon systems. Your life support systems specifically." The implications of this statement hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. Traditional military doctrine called for targeting enemy weapons first, then engines, then critical systems. But the humans were targeting the one thing that would kill everyone aboard enemy vessels while leaving their technology completely intact. "We could end the life of every being in this star system in approximately 4 minutes, Harrison continued, checking a small device on his wrist as if he were commenting on the weather. "Your ships, your orbital stations, this planet itself. Everything would remain perfectly functional. You would simply no longer be alive to use any of it." Panic began to spread through the chamber as delegates realized the full scope of what was happening. Security forces from various species reached for their weapons, only to find that their energy systems were completely non-responsive. Sidearms that had been functional moments before were now nothing more than decorative metal. "Your weapons have been disabled," Lieutenant Commander Pete Rogers announced from his position at a secondary console near the chamber's entrance. "Not destroyed, simply turned off. We will reactivate them when we leave, assuming you wish us to do so." Rogers had been so quiet during the proceedings that most delegates had forgotten he was even present. Now they realized that while their attention had been focused on Harrison's presentation, the humans had been taking control of every system in the chamber. Dr. Chang activated her datapad again, and the screens around the chamber began displaying detailed scans of every species present: heart rates, brain activity, respiratory patterns, stress indicators. The humans had been monitoring the biological state of every delegate throughout the entire meeting. "We know the exact atmospheric composition each of your species requires to remain conscious," Chang explained with the same clinical detachment she might use to describe a laboratory experiment. "We know the specific frequencies that will disrupt your nervous systems without causing permanent damage. We know the precise pressure points that will render you unconscious in seconds." The scanning data on the screens was incredibly detailed, showing information that should have been impossible to gather without intimate physical contact. But somehow the humans had collected complete biological profiles on every species in the chamber during what everyone had assumed were peaceful diplomatic exchanges. "This information was gathered during our first 50 years of contact with your civilizations," Chang continued. "Every handshake, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic dinner, every trade negotiation. You welcomed us as friends and we studied you as potential enemies." General Korth tried to stand but found his legs would not support him. The Karathi warrior was experiencing something he had never felt before in his long military career. Pure terror was coursing through his reptilian nervous system as he realized that every peaceful contact his people had made with humans had been an intelligence-gathering operation. "Our diplomatic corps are trained in biological warfare," Chong explained, showing detailed charts of alien physiology on the screens. "Our cultural attachés are experts in psychological manipulation. Our trade representatives are specialists in economic disruption techniques." The Zekth delegation was making high-pitched distress calls that their translators could not properly convert into other languages. The insectoid species communicated partially through pheromones, and the stress chemicals they were releasing were beginning to affect other delegates in the chamber. "Every human settlement you have encountered is designed for military purposes," Captain Bennett said, activating his own display systems. "What you see as peaceful colonies are actually fortress worlds. What you interpret as scientific research stations are weapons development facilities. What you believe are agricultural communities are training grounds for our military forces." The screens showed human colonies throughout the galaxy, but now the alien delegates could see what they had missed before. Every civilian structure was positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. Every farm was laid out to channel attacking forces into kill zones. Every research facility was built to withstand orbital bombardment. "Our children learn tactical analysis before they learn to read," Bennett continued. "Our farmers know how to operate military vehicles. Our teachers understand strategy and logistics. Our scientists design weapons as easily as they design medical equipment." Harrison walked closer to the assembled delegates, and several of them instinctively tried to move away from him. But their seats were equipped with restraint systems that had been quietly activated during the presentation, holding them in place while the humans delivered their final revelations. "You asked for proof of our capabilities," Harrison said, his voice now carrying an edge that made even the bravest warriors in the chamber flinch. "Every system in this chamber is under our control. Every ship in orbit is helpless before our weapons. Every delegate in this room is completely at our mercy." The truth was now undeniable. Humanity had not been seeking membership in the Galactic Council as equals. They had been demonstrating that they could destroy every member civilization whenever they chose to do so. The silence in the chamber was so complete that the soft humming of the life support systems sounded like thunder in the ears of the terrified delegates. Harrison stood in the center of the room, surrounded by beings who just minutes before had been laughing at human weakness, and now sat frozen in their seats as the true nature of humanity became clear to them. "You want to know why humans avoid war?" Harrison said, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber without any electronic amplification. "It is not because we are weak. It is not because we lack courage. It is not because we fear death or pain or suffering." He walked slowly among the seated delegates, and each one instinctively tried to shrink away from him as he passed. The human ambassador, who had seemed so ordinary when he first entered the chamber, now appeared as something far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. "We avoid war because we are very, very good at it," Harrison continued, stopping in front of the Thalarian delegation, where War Master Krek sat motionless with his warhammer forgotten in his lap. "When humans go to war, we do not fight for territory or resources or honor. We do not seek to capture or conquer or control." The screens around the chamber activated again, showing images of human colonies that the alien delegates had visited during peaceful exchanges. But now they could see the hidden defensive systems, the camouflaged weapon emplacements, the underground bunkers that could house entire populations during siege conditions. "Every human settlement is a military installation," Captain Bennett explained, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had helped design these defensive systems. "Every civilian is a trained soldier. Every child knows how to operate weapons and communication equipment. Every adult can perform military engineering tasks." The images shifted to show the inside of human homes and schools. What had appeared to be ordinary furniture could be quickly converted into defensive positions. Playground equipment doubled as training obstacles for small unit tactics. Gardens were laid out to provide food during extended siege conditions. "We do not maintain armies," Bennett continued. "We are an army. Every human settlement, from the smallest research outpost to the largest colony world, can transform into a fortress in minutes. Every civilian can become a soldier at a moment's notice." Dr. Chang stepped forward with new data displayed on her pad. "Our population centers are designed around the concept of total defense. Manufacturing facilities can switch from producing consumer goods to military equipment in hours. Transportation networks are built to move troops and supplies as efficiently as they move civilians and cargo." The alien delegates stared at the images in growing horror as they realized that every peaceful human they had ever met was actually a potential enemy combatant. The friendly scientists who had shared research data, the helpful engineers who had built infrastructure projects, the cheerful traders who had established commercial relationships. All of them were part of a military machine that could mobilize faster than any standing army. Harrison moved to stand directly in front of General Korth, who was staring at the Karathi warrior with eyes that seemed to see right through his scaled hide. "When we encountered your civilizations, we found species that fight for conquest. You battled to expand your territories, to claim new resources, to prove your strength to others." The human ambassador's voice took on a tone that made every predator species in the chamber recognize the sound of something far more dangerous than themselves. "We fight for extinction events. When humans go to war, we do not stop until there is nothing left of our enemies. No survivors, no prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy." The screens now showed theoretical battle plans that human military strategists had developed for conflicts with every major galactic power. Not plans for defeating enemy fleets or capturing enemy worlds, but plans for completely eliminating entire civilizations from existence. "Our military doctrine is based on a simple principle," Harrison explained. "If something threatens humanity, it must cease to exist. Not just its military forces, not just its government, not just its ability to make war. Everything. Every ship, every world, every trace that it ever existed. War Master Krex finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "But why do you tell us this? If you could have conquered us all, why did you choose to reveal your strength instead?" Harrison's expression softened slightly, and for the first time since the demonstration began, he looked almost human again. "Because we learned something from our 10,000 years of violence, War Master. We discovered that peace is harder than war. Creation is more difficult than destruction. Building something worthwhile takes far more skill than tearing it down." He gestured toward the screens, which now showed human colonies engaged in peaceful activities. Scientists conducting research that benefited multiple species, engineers building infrastructure that improved life for millions of beings, doctors treating patients regardless of their species or political affiliation. "We choose the harder path because we have seen where the easy one leads," Harrison continued. "We have walked to the very edge of destroying ourselves, and we decided to step back. We offer our friendship to those who will accept it, our protection to those who need it, and our warning to those who would threaten either." The chamber remained silent as the implications of Harrison's words sank in. The humans were not asking to join the Galactic Council as junior partners or even as equals. They were offering to protect a galaxy that could not protect itself from the most dangerous predators it had ever encountered. Murphy activated her communication system one final time. "Admiral, please begin the withdrawal. The demonstration is complete." High above the planet, the massive human fleet began to fade from view as their stealth systems reactivated. Within minutes, the ships that had appeared from nowhere vanished back into nothing, leaving only the stunned alien vessels orbiting a world whose inhabitants would never feel safe again. "The vote for human membership in the Galactic Council will now commence," announced the Veltar speaker, their musical voice shaking with barely controlled terror. "All in favor." The response was immediate and unanimous. Every delegate raised their hand or made whatever gesture indicated agreement. In their culture, no one spoke against the motion, no one abstained. No one dared to do anything that might be interpreted as opposition to human interests. Harrison smiled for the second time since entering the chamber, and this expression was genuinely warm and friendly. "Thank you for your confidence. We look forward to working with all of you to maintain peace and prosperity throughout the galaxy." As the human delegation prepared to leave, War Master Krex approached Harrison privately. The massive Thalarian warrior moved carefully, as if approaching a sleeping predator that might wake at any moment. "How many of you are there?" Krex asked quietly. "How many humans exist in the galaxy?" Harrison looked up at the towering alien warrior and gave him the same smile he had shown the entire council. "Enough." As the humans walked out of the chamber, delegates throughout the galaxy began to understand that their universe had changed forever. The quiet neighbors who built peaceful settlements and avoided conflicts were not harmless civilians. They were apex predators who had chosen to be vegetarians, and that choice could be revoked at any time. The Galactic Council's first official act with human membership was the passage of a comprehensive peace treaty that applied to every member world and every known civilization. The vote was unanimous, passed without debate, and implemented immediately across all Council territories. No one wanted to give humanity a reason to reconsider their commitment to peace. The galaxy learned to sleep less soundly, knowing that the most dangerous species in known space was watching over them with weapons that could crack planets and the will to use them if necessary. And in human space, carved above the doorways of every settlement from the smallest outpost to the largest colony, the ancient warning took on new meaning for anyone who bothered to read it. War is not hell. War is worse. Hell is just where we send our enemies.